Greetings, YouTube. Today I'm going to be reviewing the book Wasp Farm. Now, the first thing I want to bring your attention to is look at that cover. This cover is just unbelievably beautiful. This is just a work of art. It is so wonderfully simple and direct, and it's just a lovely aesthetic. And this book was written by Howard Ensign Evans. Ensign is a very intriguing middle name. I would love to know the story behind how he ended up with the middle name Ensign. And he is an entomologist, a biologist, and he has a fascination with wasps, which I could fully understand. They're quite interesting. And inside the front cover, and of course the back cover, there is a radial map of or a diagram of how the wasps evolved and how they led to the ants and the bees. I can remember how fascinated I was when I learned, and I don't remember how long ago it was, that the wasps were the progenitors of both ants and bees. So bees weren't a real stretch, but ants, that caught me off guard when I first learned it. But then when I thought about it, there being many species of burrowing wasps, it kind of made sense that ants would evolve from burrowing wasps, and there are ants that sting. And wasps have stingers. Not all wasps have actual poison that produce from their stingers, but most do of some variety or another. And it was interesting to see how many of the wasps' evolutionary lineage are still present with us. There are some very primitive wasps in the world. Wasps so primitive that they have a poison that only temporarily paralyzes their prey. And they actually, it's not even, I can't even call it prey in some regards, because the wasp itself, the female, is not eating that prey. It's stunning it, laying an egg on it, and then leaving. And the real primitive ones do that. They stun it, lay an egg, and leave, and the insect goes on to about its life until the egg hatches and it eats it. It's very, very chancy, because when the larval goes to the pupae stage, it's out in the open. Very unlikely to survive. Likely enough for that lineage to still be with us, but much more of a gamble. Then they move to the burrowing wasps. Then eventually you move to the semi-social wasps. And I say semi-social in that a queen isn't like the honeybee queens. It's sort of like the first wasp to establish a nest, and other wasps kind of come and join her. But a queen could actually end up abandoning her nest and joining another hive as a worker. So it's a very, very loose structure. And then you move into the hornets, and then to the hornets and yellow jackets are terms that the author thinks they're kind of interchangeable, which is fine. He's an entomologist, I'm not. But you get to the yellow jackets, which are the most advanced of this family, and they are true social wasps with a defined queen, workers, the whole 9 yards. And you can see the honeybees, the bees, and all the honeybees right there. There's the model right there. And they've got to the point where they're chewing food as opposed to taking whole insects for their larvae. Because the larvae are the ones that eat the insects. The adults, they eat nectar. So you can see the adults eating nectar, larvae eating insects. And then the next stage, the yellow jackets, was the adults still eating nectar, and they're just chewing up found foods. They don't have to hunt for individual insects. Now they're taking food from the wild, scavenging it for the most part, and chewing it up for the larva. And then the next stage was elimination of prey completely, and it was all honeybees, with nothing to do with insects at all, or seeking out foods other than pollen and things like that. So this was fascinating. I didn't know a lot of this. Now, this book was printed in 1963, so a lot of that is probably outdated in some regards. It's just probably better and more updated data on wasps in the world today. Things I really loved about this, at the end of every chapter, he gave a pronunciation guide for all the wasps he discussed in that chapter. And I'm happy to say I nailed it about 60% of the time. I screwed up more on the Greek end of their taxonomic names as opposed to the Latin end, but I still did pretty good. And he also gives references at the end of every chapter for further reading specific to that chapter. And again, 1963, there's probably a whole lot better information out there. I would like to actually go out and find a good modern book on wasps, one that is as approachable as this, because this book is incredibly approachable. It is just, it's right there, it's easy to comprehend. He's interested in this topic. He talks about how they spent 8 years on a piece of farm property, and how they fostered all kinds of environments for the wasps to come and use, and that he used that as part of his research. He talked about his work when he was a grad student and such, spent camping out for days just to watch one wasp lay out its different nests and things. And the illustrations are quite good. In fact, there's one in here I happen to quite like. It's on 44, and it shows a multi-chambered burrow that was done by a single wasp. The nest profile of Astata unicolor, which is a type of wasp, and just that branching, complex subterranean structure, because there are yellow jackets that are ground nesting as opposed to paper wasps, which create their own paper nests like the honeybees do and things like that. So you can see the incipient communal social wasp structure right there. And this is something that will be maintained by a single wasp. There are parasitic wasps. There are huge numbers of insects that are parasites upon wasps. So they have to have strategies to prevent them. And their ability to locate and navigate is incredible. I mean, some of these wasps they have active nests in sand dunes. And they are able to find their nests even though shifting sands are involved, by taking a circular navigation flight that is partly built on the immediate structures right where the nest is, and then on a larger geographic structure, so big things that can't move, hills and trees and things like that. And they're also seen to be using polarized light to help them navigate. So these are incredibly complex, fascinating creatures. I can remember when I was working at a job years ago, and it had a lot that seemed to be well loved by wasps. And it was when I first became aware of ground-dwelling wasps as an adult, because I'd never encountered them when I was a kid. I'd only ever encountered the paper wasps or the mud daubers that build nests with mud tubes on buildings and structures and things like that. I'd never encountered ground dwellers, and that one summer I encountered both great golden digger wasps, which are gorgeous, and cobalt wasps, which are also gorgeous. In fact, I was on break one day, and I was a lead operator. And I'm outside, and it was summertime, and I'm in the shade, I'm reading, just relaxing. And I'm near the nesting area of a number of great golden digger wasps. And wasps will often seek out minerals. And a wasp lands on my face because I'm sweating. It wants the salt on my skin. I ignore the wasp, but I keep reading. And one of my coworkers, one of my subordinates, one of the people I'm in charge of, says, "Hold still, I'll hit the wasp." And I very calmly and rationally, I never stopped reading my book. I just said, "If you touch the wasp, you're going to spend the rest of the day licking the floor clean. Leave the wasp alone." Both the wasp and I were fine. My employee decided that he was not going to test whether I would actually make him lick the floor clean. He left. But this book is very readable and very approachable. I'm going to go out and probably see if I can find something that is of the same caliber and aimed at a general audience about wasps, but say not a year older than I am. Now, the one thing I took away from this, I think that was the greatest marvel. He only really talks specifically about evolution as a topic in one chapter. The rest of the time he's just discussing evolution as it pertains to wasps and how they evolve and things like that. For example, how wasps carry their prey. Depending on how primitive the wasp is, will depend how they carry them. And you can see more and more advanced methods of carrying prey. The least advanced ones carry them by the creature's antennas and drags them on the ground, and the more advanced ones use the 4 legs, and the next advanced ones just use the 2 middle ones, and the most advanced ones that use legs use their back ones. And then there are some wasps that have evolved stingers that are designed just to carry their prey. They've evolved specifically, their tail stingers have evolved to perfectly suited to carry their prey, so all of their legs are free. It's fascinating. So he's discussing the evolution there all through the book, but he only addresses it directly in one chapter. And what I loved about this, and it was heartbreaking when I realized it, is that evolution is just a fact. It's just reality. There was no hedging the fact that he's dealing with an environment where you have a huge, vast conspiracy of social conservatives trying to destroy one of the most fundamental aspects of science, evolutionary theory. He was not contending with that when this book was written. And unfortunately, scientists are in the modern era. That's depressing. It's like we've gone backwards thanks to social conservatives. So, if you want a book on wasps, and if you can find a copy of this cover, do so. I'm keeping this book just for the cover. The illustrations inside are also going to be useful to me. But this is just a beautiful book, and I may find uses for the references of the articles and of the pronunciation guides. So, highly recommended, thoroughly enjoyable. Go and read about wasps.